What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we got Jarrett of Pulchra Morte. Thank you for your time today, man. It's great to have you here.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Yep, it's so awesome to be able to talk about this brand new album, Ex Rosa Ceremonia, scheduled to come out next Friday. Look forward to for the rest of the world to hearing it. How was the overall making of this album? Was there like a preconceived idea? Was there a lot of improvising? How did Ex Rosa Ceremonia sort of like come to be?
Well, it seems to be our thing where our man Jeff, who is the riff machine, throws up a bunch of ideas. Like, we just have Jeff record everything he comes up with, and then so we kind of build the frameworks out of what Jeff does, and then Clay gets them, and he'll adjust some tempos and play them. Then he'll send them to me, and I'll cut them up and rearrange them and throw them back at them and be like, all right, well, let's try this. And then I'll start playing over it, start adding my thing to it. And when we kind of get it in shape, then we'll go in the studio and do it. And we did the drums. The recording was kind of spread out just because of work and touring and stuff. And so we recorded the drums last fall at Earth Analog. And then we did the guitars, most of the guitars after that. But then we had to go and play some shows, and then I was working and touring. So we regrouped in January, and we started working on vocals and then picked back up at the beginning of March and did vocals and bass, and then we finished up the vocals there. And then after that, I was mixing it, and I was also playing and writing interludes and extra parts and solos while the entire time I was mixing it. We were continuing to add stuff to it. And then I think John came and finished his bass in June, and then I finished it up. So it's kind of a long process, but not really for any reason than we like working, but we also don't really have to rush, so we kind of don't. We kind of just do it at our own pace,
Yeah, did these songs change a lot over a span of time, being that the recording was kind of spread out, or is what we're hearing how these songs were first initially intended to sound?
Well, once we locked them in, after the demo and pre-production writing stage of it was done, they're pretty. That's pretty much it. Other than guitar solos, but then kind of the way Jeff and I work in the studio is that we just kind of hand the guitar back and forth, and so there would be a part, and then what if we play this here? We do this here, or we double the picking here, or this, that, and the other. But once that was nailed, that was pretty much it.
Okay. Do you think that the first single that you released, The Archer in the News, can that serve as maybe a clear representation of what this whole album is going to sound like, or is that just the tip of the iceberg?
Oh, gosh. Well, we released a pre-production single last January called Knife of the Will, and then we released the title track, and then we released The Serpent's Choir, which had, I guess 60 guest vocalists on it, 100 voices all together. And then Archer was actually the final. And the weird thing about Archer is that it's probably my favorite song on the record, but it's kind of the most thematic in a way. All the songs are similar. I mean, they assemble a cool record. They definitely have a voice to them. But Archer is, well, it's a little bit different. Mm-hmm. But it's a good landscape of what we do, I think, because I kind of threw, a lot of things at that particular song, even though it's a pretty straightforward song, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel what I love about Pulchra Morte is the consistency. The last album that you released last year, Divina, that had such a good consistent element behind it, but had enough experimentation to keep it engaging. I feel you guys kind of have the best of both worlds, where you're able to be consistent but not be repetitive.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because our biggest thing, we always say constantly, is that write songs. Write songs. The most important thing is that we have songs that are engaging, not there's plenty of music out there that's like a riff fest or like, a technical onslaught on display, and I love that stuff. I mean, I mean, just all the way back to my youth, Ripping Corps, for instance, was and still is probably one of my all-time favorite bands. So that's the thing that I love. For our band, like what we're trying to do, it's literally always write a song. Like it doesn't have to be a million riffs. Just write a good song that is going to put the hooks in. I just hope people hear what we do and they walk away with an earworm, something humming it in their head. That's really what I want to see.
Yeah, definitely. It's like so atmospheric, but so technical at the same time. I feel like I really call Pulchra Morte to be like a very meat and potatoes death metal band, because I think it just goes all in and it doesn't let up until it's over. And I like that you guys just really go in with the mind frame of just writing songs. You don't think of like some bigger picture here or some, you don't focus on details very early in the process. You just go right into it and sort of pick apart more or less, right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. We just always like the atmosphere is important and the vibe is, of course, important. But at the end of the day, the song, like you said, like we just want to write songs that are engaging, that people understand, and that people absorb. I mean, I definitely have a lot of live experience, and I've seen some really amazing things that like the audience is like, oh my God, like what's happening here? And it's like me, I think that's funny. Like I imagine like maybe seeing like the Mars Volta would have been like that for people. And I love stuff like that. But for us, like I want to hand them something that just moves them right away.
Yeah, definitely. Waste no time. We don't have to worry about a 17.5-minute guitar solo with Pulchra Morte.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Or at least yet.
Anything's possible, but we're not looking down that street quite yet.
You never know. I pitch the idea. But
it's just Alex.
Blame me if you're not happy with the guitar solos on future offerings.
It's all your fault.
But do you actually have a theoretical background behind your craft and your instrument, or are you more on the self-taught side?
Oh no! I've been playing since I was like about 7 years old, and I took lessons early on, and then I kind of got into, I really got into punk rock and hardcore when I was, I was first exposed to it when I was about 10, but I really dove in deep when I was about 12 and didn't come up for quite a few years. I was, really into that so that was just like manipulating power chords. And then once Eulogy started, there was a lot of just trying to learn the theory so that I could write harmonies and things like that. I mean, my friend Jay Fernandez that played in Brutality and also played in Eulogy really briefly is one of the people that taught me a lot of the stuff I needed to know early on. And then over the years, I learned a lot of that had to do more to do with being a producer. Knowing you kind of have to know how to construct a chord. You have to know how to write a harmony. You have to know what counterpoint is. And I also mixed. I mean, I've mixed all kinds of music, everything from jazz to blues to classical to Baroque orchestras. So I was really well rounded and I'm the kind of person where if something's interesting to me, like I'll go read about it and I'll want to absorb like why it is what it is. So even though I would say that in a lot of ways it's self-taught, I had a lot of friends and a lot of experiences along the way that contributed and influenced me and helped me learn things that maybe weren't quite as apparent to me.
Yeah, definitely. And being such I feel like you are like a jack of all trades, because for those of you listening, actually, Jarrett was a tour manager for a lot of interviews we've done in the past, such as 1349 and Tyr and Sirenia. And I know that you've mixed with a lot of bands as well. That also has to open your mind to new ideas and new ways to approach your craft as well, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I probably listen to an extremely wide range of music. I mean, right up until the lockdown, I had been out with Kiefer Sutherland, everyone's favorite vampire, for the last year. In front of that, Keeper plays like kind of an Americana, like rock, slightly country, but mostly like kind of an Americana rock. And I like that. I was with Dr. John for a long time, New Orleans jazz legend, and I got to see and work with a lot of different people that were, truly amazing. Everyone that played in that band was amazing, and we had a lot of really cool guests that I feel fortunate to have gotten to see. So not only do I get to experience working with a lot of different kinds of people, I also listen to a lot of different kinds of music. People don't know this about me, but like 80s, like new wave and like death rock and stuff like that. I'm listened to a lot. Glitter and glam rock from the 70s, like the Dolls and T-Rex and Bowie and Mott the Hoople. I'm just all over the place. I was listening to Miles Davis earlier. So, it's everywhere.
Yeah, that's always good to be. And I think that's very, that I've noticed that in like a lot of Pulchra Morte as well, because I feel like you guys escaped the scenario where it's like, oh, let me guess what your favorite band is. A band you sound exactly like. I could tell that you have multiple influences just from listening to the riffing on here and listening to the sound of Pulchra Morte. It's like, it's all out brutality, but you could tell that it's coming from multiple directions.
Yeah, we definitely are trying to, hammer an emotional chord, that's for sure.
Definitely. Do you find it easier to come up with ideas for songwriting when you're more like alone? I've always said isolation is a great fuel for creativity. Or do you find it easier to maybe come up with song ideas when you're maybe in the company of other bandmates or other musicians?
It depends. Luckily, the lion's share of the original ideas for us come from Jeff, and so I kind of already have a canvas to work with where our band's concerned, although there are songs that I've written. And the way I write songs, funny enough, is I normally get up at the first thing in the morning and play, and I don't know whether it's like some sort of dream translation or whatever, but that's when I seem to be the most productive. However, going further back, all of the eulogy music, the band that Clay and I did, back in the day, was written standing there looking at each other, and that in that way, it just depends on who you're working with. Clay and I speak to this day a language that I don't think anyone else does. It's just a language between him and I, and I noticed that with certain musicians. I have another friend named Brian Malbin, who's a really incredible drummer, who I have that same dialogue with. And so I think it depends on who you're playing with, because being able to kind of accomplish something without necessarily speaking is kind of a rare thing. But as far as my writing goes, my ideas, I kind of feel like more of them now come just by playing early in the morning and kind of seeing what happens. Unfortunately, if it starts, the day is shot because I won't get up. I'll start playing. I get up pretty early. I'll get up at 8 o'clock in the morning and start playing. And if something takes hold, I'll look up and it'll be 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So when I do start it, the day's pretty gone.
That's not the worst thing that could happen in the songwriting process. If anything, that's really cool because and you mentioned it a little bit before. I feel like when you first wake up, it is sort of like a good time to immerse yourself in art because, whether it's certain dreams or just a certain experience, like that moment of when you I feel like waking up after an intense dream back into reality, it is almost kind of like entering from one reality into another. And that's going to influence you one way or another as well.
Yeah. Like I said, I also, it very well could be some sort of dream translation. I definitely have a theory about music that has to do with emotion and how you create, and your mood and where you're at the time is always kind of applied to what you create, and then you make this thing and then it travels as music to someone else, and then they take and they translate that sound into a feeling that it gives them on the other side. So it's in a way it's sort of and emotional language that gets shared between people. And maybe you're more willing to let that out when you first wake up. Maybe that's why it works that way for me. I don't know, but that's how it is.
Every artist is different. Being that you've played with multiple projects, from Pulchra Morte to Eulogy to Brutality, and even playing with Wolfhammer, like, is there a different mind frame depending on like the project that you're working with, or is there a usual method behind the madness that like applies to everything?
Oh, Eulogy was different than anything else ever. Kinefera, which is a band I was in with, guys from Dillinger, guys that played for Converge, a bunch of people from Virginia Beach, like hardcore guys from Virginia Beach. That really band was more about going berserk, far less, in my opinion, about musicianship, although it was incredibly complex. It was a lot more about just like losing your shit. And so with Wolfhammer, it just was so fast. It was just learn the music, like learn it in 4 days and get on an airplane and walk in and be ready for a rehearsal and immediately go play shows and end at Psycho Las Vegas. Like, that's what Wolfhammer was. It's like, hey, we need someone to cover. You have 4 days. Can you learn these songs and fly here and do it? So that was really just sort of drilling it. Brutality, I liked the chemistry that Jeff and Scott and Jay have, and I didn't really want to intrude on that because I really liked what Brutality was. So in that band's case, I was really focused on just performance and playing the songs correctly, technically. So they have different approaches for different reasons. With Pulchra Morte, it is kind of everything in the kitchen sink in there, presentation, songs. But at the root of it all, I'm kind of weird about the work ethic where I feel like I'm fortunate to have other people that will share their time with me. And so if I agree to do a project or be a part of a project, or, in the case of Pulchra, our band comes together and works, I'm always really fanatical about coming prepared.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever want to let people down. I always want to be ready, so I practice really hard, and I just make sure that I come correct. And it's out of respect for the people that I play with, and that is a theme that has always been there with me.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it shows. I consider the best way I've described Pulchra Morte is all organic metal. That's how I describe it.
Well, I like that. That's great.
Yep. That's going to be a new subgenre now. The first subgenre that doesn't have core at the end of it.
I love it. It's fantastic.
Yep. All organic metal. Let's make that. I got to trademark that actually very soon.
Yes, totally.
Yep. You'll be the first band to be labeled as that. You ready for the most difficult question of the whole interview?
Yeah, of course.
How do you know when a song is done?
Oh, shit. Well, when I sit back and I listen to the demos and nothing about it bothers me. And the way I try to explain that is like, we'll arrange and we'll do this, that, and the other, and if I feel like something's too long, then it has to be, or if I feel like one part doesn't go into the next part correctly, or if I feel like there's a great part that hasn't happened, enough in the song. That's a real big pet peeve of mine. There's like great riffs that happen one time in a song for like 2 bars, and it drives me insane. I hate it. So I'm always real careful when I have a riff or something that's, when we're arranging, that I make sure that we give things their due. But I will tell you something really funny. It's not actually as much song geared, but it is absolutely album geared. They say where engineers and producers are concerned that you never finish an album. Eventually you just give up. Mm-hmm.
I've interviewed a lot of mixers and producers, and they've said that, like, they said the best answer I got is when the band stops fighting.
Right. That's extremely accurate. So, mostly it just has to do with when I sit back and listen to it, and there's a feeling, and I go, Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
And that's the best way I can describe it. That's how you know.
Yep.
That's how I know. When nothing bothers me anymore.
Yep. And as a producer and a mixer, I was interviewing Logan Mader actually earlier this year, and he said that like a producer is sometimes just like a camp counselor for the band. Do you concur?
Oh, it can be. I think I've been many different things: psychologist, referee, various things when it comes to working with bands. But yeah, I think camp counselor would encompass it all. Sounds good.
Yeah, and it's cool too because, and this led me into my final question. Actually, I'll get into that, but like, because I feel like producing and mixing is like a separate talent altogether. Like, I know people who could understand composition and understand arrangement, but can't only know a few basic chords on guitar and stuff. Like, I feel like that's a separate art. When you are working with a band as a producer or a mixer, or even working as an engineer and live sound, like, do you like listen to the band's work being like, okay, this is what I have to do, this is how it needs to be done? Or does the band kind of want you to bring your own mix into what they do?
Well, it depends on what I'm doing, because it definitely is different. For instance, with the live show, it's not really much about you, other than just your technical ability to get the best out of a system. You want to get familiar with the record that they're touring on, or with their music, and you want to figure out how to convey to the audience what they're trying to say. And that's what live is. As far as being an engineer or just the mixer, you want to try to figure out what it is they're trying to do and figure out the best way to represent it. And that's kind of where that comes in. Now, producing, for me anyway, is kind of a different thing. I don't much get into writing people's songs with them, for one thing, although, on the Wolfhammer record, there's at least one riff on that record that I completely rewrote. It was in like 3/4 time, and it didn't really work, and so I changed it around and got it to play in straight time and rewrote how it was done. A lot of producing, though, for me is not just getting the sounds or the tones. I kind of feel like that falls more into engineering, but getting the best out of people that you can, and the best way for me to do that producer wise is I talk to them about what their intention is. I have two of my favorite vocalists of all time I've worked very closely with, and we have conversations in the studio, and there's a little bit of visualization that I push with them. I'm like, you're not looking at the wall, this is time travel. You have to already see your congregation. You have to see the people that you're talking to now, because if you're not addressing them now, they'll hear it. Like, emotion gets captured by recording. So, and then, sometimes trying to figure out what character a person is playing. Are you the narrator? Are you the antagonist? Are you the protagonist? Are you the victim? With musicians, I was just working on something this week with a really well-known, thrash band, and I was explaining, how when things go fast, how there's this sort of almost balancing on one leg thing that you used to do when you would, be in, real slam dancing, circle dancing in the punk rock days, which is very different than what I see happen now. And there's this way of sort of teetering on the edge of yourself as you're kind of running around. And if you go back and you listen to a lot of the music, both metal and hardcore, from when that stuff was sort of becoming a thing, there's a way that the vocals ride a wave on top of it, and getting that to come out of people. So that's a really long answer. Sorry, Alex.
No, it's all good. I love long answers.
It's just about, it has to do with just trying to get them to feel whatever it needs to say while they're playing it. Because maybe superstitiously, but I don't think so, I believe that the recording captures intention and captures emotion. So producing is a way different thing, and that's where the relationship with the artist and really trying to figure out what they're trying to do or what they're trying to say and how to capture the feeling of that is a big deal. It is a huge deal. I think it's the hardest thing, and it's the musical training and all that stuff is really important because you always want to be ready to lend a hand, but you also want to be smart enough and not always interjecting. You have to be smart enough to balance and let them be what they are.
Definitely.
But if they get stumped, be ready. And something about producing, I just wanted to say this to everybody. If anybody out there is interested in it, there's a deck of cards out there called Oblique Strategies that Brian Eno came up with that is hilarious, but it actually helps. There are these just very obscure phrases in a deck of cards that should you find yourself stumped, I believe there's even an app on your phone for it. These very odd phrases really will help you kind of rethink some things, which is kind of an interesting trip. But anyway, that's kind of the difference between the three, and all three are really important, and I feel pretty lucky to have put in the time to be able to have a large enough arsenal of tools to be able to do those things and to be able to help out when it's needed, Definitely.
And do you find it maybe kind of going back to that recording, really captures that moment too? And I've talked to a lot of artists about this, and they say, it's got to be difficult to, capture a moment the longer you're working on something, right? I'd imagine that gets more and more difficult. I don't understand how Tool was able to capture such a moment through a span of 13 years.
I think you're right, and it probably, you can definitely burn a song out if you just continue to pick at it. You can burn a performance out. You can burn a guitar solo out. You have to know when to stop.
Yeah.
And say, here it is. This is it. I'm so ridiculous about something that I do 70 takes of something that aren't even any better than the first. I'm just OCD about certain things. I have to really watch it because I will definitely take it too far.
I remember I was interviewing a Primitive Man a couple months ago, and Ethan, their singer, he says I envy this trait about him. He says, no, I have no problem laying something down and coming back to it later if I get stumped. It doesn't bother me. I'll take as much time as I need. I'm like, dude, I don't understand how the fuck you're able to do that.
It's that's a luxury, and I think I agree with you. I think I have a level of envy for him.
Yeah, definitely. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time. Great to talk to you, and hope we could see you on the road fairly soon. Is there just anything else that you would like to promote? Could there maybe some live stream performance or online events to help promote the release of this album, or anything else going on that you'd like to plug?
Well, I'm on an airplane in the morning. I'm flying out, and we're going to rehearse, and we'll probably film a lot, and we're not going to do a live stream quite yet, but we'll definitely have some content to go with the release of the record. We've got a lot of new merch and stuff for people that are interested in collecting, and, we're looking real forward to handing over the whole thing, and hopefully down the road this year, since I don't know what playing shows is going to look like, instead of doing a live stream, I think that we are going to record and release a live concert.
Okay.
We're thinking about it. We're talking about it. Nothing's concrete yet, but that's kind of what we want to do. Mm-hmm. And so budgets and things like that have everything to do with it, but that's kind of what we're planning on doing.
Awesome. Well, I definitely look forward to seeing that if you do it. But thank you so much, Jarrett. Everybody, we are here with Jarrett of Pulchra Morte. Be sure to pick up the brand new album, Ex Rosa Ceremonia, coming out November 6th. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We will see you next time.